So 4 weeks ago, I started out on an epic journey from the border with Israel and Egypt, all the way up on many hundreds of miles of desert trails and dirt tracks bound for Nazareth in the north of Israel in the region of Galilee. And I'm here in Jerusalem, halfway through, just over halfway, just reflecting on the last few weeks of this desert trek. I think if I'd known when I started quite how challenging it would be, maybe I wouldn't have set off. I remember walking up the ridge on that first morning with the Red Sea behind me into the mountains of the Negev and just seeing ridges, dark ridges stretching out across the horizon. I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, my feet were painful already, the backpack was heavy, and it just felt like a ridiculous journey. But really I wanted to mirror another ridiculous journey that a young family would have taken just over 2,000 years ago as refugees. So the child Jesus would have started his life as a refugee in the land of Egypt, having narrowly escaped the sword of an evil and paranoid dictator. He fled for his life. So his first journey really on his own 2 feet would have been walking from Egypt all the way up to Nazareth on desert trails and dirt tracks, and I wanted to kind of capture something of that journey. Of course there's many differences. Jesus would have walked closer to the Mediterranean. I'm further east than him, and he would have had a lot less comforts. I had boots and a rucksack and a phone, and so in some ways I'm a million miles from his original journey. But I still wanted to capture something of the experience of walking through the wilderness on a similar route to him on my own 2 feet. He wouldn't have taken a car or hopped on a flight. He would have walked the whole way, and I wanted to do the same, to experience that raw stillness of the wilderness and the challenges that he would have had as well. So I was very lucky at the beginning. My first week I was joined by my Cornish brother and friend Pete Kessel, and so a week into our trip we sat down one afternoon as the sun was setting and reflected on the expedition.
I think it's just good being out here and having to think every day about where your food and water's coming from, and feeling the constant pain in your back from the rucksack and the constant pain in your shoes of your weight and your rucksack's weight and all those things, and those constant reminders of, yeah, I'm a human being.
First few days I had pretty awful blisters, and just the trials of climbing a mountain with 25 kilos on your back and your feet rubbed to shreds. And yeah, I was probably having a sense of humour failure. And it occurred to me that Jesus would have felt the same. Would he have got blisters walking for hundreds of miles through the desert in sandals or maybe even bare feet? So it's humbling to think that the Son of God, incarnate as a man, would experience the rawness, literally the rawness of blisters and pain. And for those millions of refugees who know what it's like, the physical hardship as well as the emotional trauma, God can say in Jesus, yeah, I actually know how you feel. I've been there.
And that's the thing I love about Jesus. He wasn't a super spiritual, distant man. He was a real life, flesh and blood man who got dirty, who probably got blisters, who got hungry and tired and sad and lonely and all those things. And as a follower of Jesus, we have the ability to come alongside people because he's the ultimate person who can come alongside them, because he's been through all of this and a lot worse.
So for me, one of the biggest challenges of the expedition was when Pete took off home. He had to go back to work after a week, so he caught a bus from the main road going up through the Jordan Valley north to the airport, and I kind of branched west up into the Negev mountains where the air was cooler and the views more breathtaking, but it was also more isolated, I suppose. It's difficult to describe the feeling of loneliness, wandering off into that wilderness, that lifeless sort of place. And that first evening I remember it being so dark. There's no natural light, there was no background noise, it was so silent. And I started to think about that sort of loneliness. And I think for the many millions of refugees who have fled their home in the current generation, this is one of the forgotten trials that many face, is that in the kind of trauma of leaving your home, fleeing for your life, often loved ones get separated through no fault of their own. And so for me, just having a couple of days alone in the wilderness and the initial stages and feeling that isolation, that's nothing compared to the real loneliness of being separated, potentially indefinitely, from people you love. And so I wanted to do this expedition to raise money for an organisation called A21, who rescue people who have been tricked and trafficked into a world which is possibly even darker than the one they left. You can support this journey, we can support A21 through this journey. 100% of the donations may go towards A21 to those who need it most.